Philosophy is all about chilling, wearing comfy robes and slippers, because it ain't about practical stuff. It's not about stressing out over practical skills or dealing with the outside world. Instead, it's an invitation to ponder the deep questions that define our humanity, to let our thoughts wander in a state of freedom and relaxation. Alright, folks, in today's face-to-face class, we're diving into the intro of this course. Why the heck should we bother studying philosophy? What's the deal with philosophy and how does it actually impact our lives? What's the value it brings to our studies and future careers? Let me break it down for you into a few important points. Firstly, our era calls for philosophy. We're living in a time where money and tech rule the roost. The main game in human beings is all about making and moving capital. We humans are all about growing our material wealth and using science to tinker with nature in the name of production, aka technology. It's an age of scientific breakthroughs and ever-evolving gadgets. So, should we count ourselves lucky or unlucky to be part of this wild ride? And hey, let's not forget about our beloved iPhones. Steve Jobs was a game changer, no doubt. Nowadays, you look around in any developed city, and practically everyone has a smartphone glued to their hands. With a simple swipe of our fingers, we can play around with all sorts of symbols and images, diving headfirst into an era of endless information. Science and tech have made our lives a breeze, connecting us with people from all over the globe on a whole new level. We should be grateful for this amazing era. Our lives are filled with excitement and variety, way better than those ancient emperors, kings, and nobles could ever dream of. However, what is missing in our era? So why do I say that in an age of scientific prosperity, our very era is calling out for philosophy? Let me share a quote from the famous German philosopher Edmund Husserl, who was a big deal in the 20th century and the guy who kick-started the phenomenology movement. In 1935, Husserl gave a speech at the University of Prague, and it's now famously known as the Prague Lecture. They later turned that speech into a booklet called The Crisis of European Sciences and Transcendental Phenomenology. Just from the title, you can tell that the speech aimed to expose the problems with modern science and how it's affecting our civilization. Now, here's a part from that booklet where Husserl says, people nowadays are totally consumed by empirical science and they're all hyped up about the prosperity it brings. This whole thing means that we're neglecting the most important questions about what it truly means to be human. We're only looking at the world through the lens of cold, hard facts. We've boxed ourselves into a world of facts and forgotten about everything else. Sure, we see how science has made our lives easier and brought about what we call progress, but in the process, we've carelessly swept aside the deep questions that define our humanity. So, what are the burning questions that really matter to us humans? In my opinion, Kant's answer hits the nail on the head and captures the essence. We're talking about Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher from back in the day, known for his famous book, The Critique of Pure Reason. He managed to sum up his entire philosophical exploration into 4 key questions. Now, you might be wondering, why did Kant dive headfirst into the world of philosophy? The first thing I want to tackle is, what can we actually know? As regular old humans, living within our limitations, what's the real deal with what we can know? It's like a deep dive into what we can actually be sure about. Then there's the second question Kant takes on, which is, what should we be doing? This one's different from the first. The first question is all about what knowledge is possible and where its boundaries lie. But the second question is more about moral stuff, what we should or shouldn't be doing, even if we know the facts. It's not something we can figure out just by answering the knowledge question, so it stands on its own. What should we be doing? Next up is question number 3, what can we hope for? As human beings, what can we look forward to? This one's all about what lies ahead and what we can expect. Last but not least, we've got question number 4. What does it mean to be human? It's all about understanding ourselves and what it truly means to be human. These 4 questions, like Husserl said, are the ones that today's civilization, with its obsession with empirical science, tends to brush aside. But these questions are super important when it comes to understanding what it really means to be human. Nowadays, us Chinese folks, especially the younger generation, have seen the results of 30 years of hard work and progress. Our material well-being has improved a lot compared to before. We've joined the global economic system, created our own version of a socialist market economy with some Chinese flair, and let the principles of capitalism shape our society. All these changes have completely transformed China and brought about a major societal makeover. After 3 decades have gone by, we Chinese, including the younger generation, can clearly see that we're stuck in a society driven by the demands of capitalism. We're constantly pushed to help capitalism grow, each of us individually. If you can't keep up and contribute, you'll be left out of the human social circle. We've put in a ton of effort to chase after material wealth, but it's come at a high cost. We've moved from a time when most people weren't happy with what they had, to a time when finding inner peace seems harder than ever. It's like we've lost touch with where we truly belong. We can't believe that the economic lifestyle described by rational economics is where we're meant to be, and we can't believe that all the scientific advancements in the West have really brought harmony between humans and nature. Nature is just something we conquer, it's all about the material world. And as rational beings, we use our concepts and formulas to control and shape it, all for the sake of human gain. This is the state of our existence. The situation we're in today didn't just happen out of the blue. Capitalism actually started in Europe and dictates European culture's fate. Right from the very beginning of capitalism's birth in Europe, people started critically analyzing it. We still remember the amazing philosopher from Britain, David Hume. He came up with the famous philosophical problems, known as Hume's problem. There are actually 2 problems, and let's start by talking about the second one for now. When Europeans moved away from the medieval era and left behind the Christian worldview, they started believing that reason was the key to shaping the future of human life. The progress made in Newtonian physics became a game changer. It showed that through reason, we could confidently advance our knowledge. Newtonian physics was a huge success and it introduced a fresh cultural belief to Europeans during the modern era. They began to see that all aspects of human life should be guided by reason, and the principles revealed through reason should be the standards by which we measure the value of human existence. There was this guy named Hume who asked a really important question: can we figure out what we should do based on the knowledge we gain through reason? That's Hume's famous problem too. Hume asked, how to derive ought from is. Most of you here probably study English, so this is a simple English question. Let's break it down. How to derive ought from is. Now, ought is like saying should in Chinese. Now, Hume, following the German way, turned a verb into a noun by capitalizing its first letter. In German, the first letter of a noun is always capitalized. Similarly, we see that is the third-person singular form of the verb be. He also capitalized the first letter of is to turn it into a noun. Derive from means to figure something out or understand it based on something else. So, derive ought from is means figuring out what we should do based on what exists. Translating this English sentence can be a bit complicated. We can also simplify it and say, how do we get our duties from existence? This refers to our rights and responsibilities. Duties are the things we must do, the things we should do. How can we figure out our duties based on what exists? That's Hume's famous problem too. Natural science and social science are both scientific fields that give us knowledge about the world around us, objective knowledge. This objective knowledge is made up of statements that judge and describe facts, which we call factual judgments. Now, let's think about whether we can figure out what's valuable based on these factual judgments. That's exactly the problem Hume raised. When I was in college, back in the early 1980s, I came across this question. It has always stayed with me, and it's something that social sciences also grapple with. Social sciences study how humans live together in society. If science wants to have its own set of rules, like Newtonian physics does, it should study natural things in a fair and unbiased way, right? So, social sciences study social stuff, and we just describe it accurately, but we can't judge it. When we face this social reality, we can't judge it. Once we start judging it, it's no longer considered science, right? But the things social sciences study, like social facts and reality, all have some value to them. Whether we prefer a feudal political system or a capitalist one, there's a question of what we think is important, right? If most people in a country agree with and accept a certain social order, it shows that they share a common value. Without considering values, a social system can't even exist. You can't just see a social system as a natural result of simple cause and effect. And that's where Hume's problem comes into play. If the idea in the Western world since modern times is that reason should not only give us knowledge about the world around us, but also determine what we should and shouldn't value, then reason could replace God. In Europe, it becomes a new focal point, a central source of meaning in our lives. The movement of Western rationalism has been going on up to this day. But has reason ever really achieved that? Can it tell us how we should live, not just how things are in reality? The problem Hume brought up, known as Hume's problem, is still unsolved today. The truth is, we can't figure out what we should or shouldn't be doing just by using reason and knowledge about the world. In simple terms, reason has never been able to find a universal value that everyone in the world can agree on. If it could, all the clashes between different cultures and the constant fights for self-interest among nations would disappear. But, unfortunately, that's not how things are. When you think about it, in this day and age where science and capitalism dominate, if we want to be truly human and live meaningful lives, we have to go beyond just focusing on science and logic. We need to ask ourselves deeper questions about the purpose of our existence and the values that drive our society. These questions are unavoidable. So, you could say that our current era, shaped by capitalism and science, is in a state of crisis, and it's precisely because of that, we need philosophy to help us make sense of it all. In my opinion, now that we're in the 21st century, it's going to be a century where philosophy or religion takes the lead. If science was the main focus in the 20th century, what will guide us in the 21st century? Personally, I strongly believe it will be philosophy, especially for the Chinese. It's all about philosophy. For other countries, it will be a mix of philosophy and religion. Why do I say that? Just look at the world today, in the 21st century. We've got two major issues that are like stubborn fishbones stuck in our throats, making it hard to swallow or cough them up. So, what are these fishbones? One is nuclear energy, the whole deal with using atomic power. The other is terrorism. I think these two problems really highlight the biggest and most obvious struggles that humanity is facing right now.